Thanks for watching Wood and Shop. I'm Joshua Farnsworth, and I'm out here in beautiful Ruckersville, Virginia with Todd Horn. He's a local mobile sawmiller, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about a really great option for getting lumber for woodworking. A mobile sawmill is a great way to get more affordable lumber, especially if you have a lot of trees, with much more customization. You can choose what you want. So Todd, can you tell us a little bit about the process and the cost involved for people who either want to come here to you or wherever they might live? And by the way, Todd, if you live within an hour or two of Ruckersville, Virginia, Todd is a really good miller. He has a great bandsaw mill. But if you're in somewhere else in the country, not close to here, this information will really help you to find somebody and to understand the process for getting your lumber milled up.
Sure. Thanks, Josh, for the opportunity to share today. Yeah, having a portable bandsaw mill, I can come out to your site and cut up your trees. I like to come for more than just one or two trees. And so I guess some of the things that you would want to ask a miller in your area would be if they have a traveling fee or a setup fee, or when they start their time, how they charge either by the board foot or by the hour. I do an hourly rate of $75 an hour right now, here in 2016, January. So, and I have no setup fee. I just start from the time whenever I have the saw set up and ready to go, which doesn't take long. But then it all depends on if you have your logs stacked and easy to be loaded onto the saw, which has log loaders to load the log onto the saw, as long as they're in close proximity that we can roll them easy. That's not too much, but obviously your money would go up if we had to drag logs or skid logs, trim limbs off of them. So if you have them prepared in a nice stack that's easily accessible with the saw, that goes pretty quickly.
Which we did not.
So as it goes, I would like to think better for the customer by the hour. Some of my friends and guys that I know have charged by the board foot, but typically if you saw all day, you'd be paying about a third more if you saw it by the board foot than by the hour, even though maybe $75 an hour might sound a lot at the beginning. But and then I do a $30 per blade that hits any metal or foreign object, because it stresses the blade and pretty much it wrecks a blade if you hit anything of any. It's not just sharpening it, it's pretty much wrecks the blade. So you'd want to check their blade fee and things like that.
Okay, well, thank you. One idea I had is if you don't have property where a tree has fallen, a really good option would be to go to a log yard, and that way you can actually pick out a really perfect tree, prime tree, for probably, it depends on the rates and the time and who's buying logs, but I think you could get a good log, maybe like an oak, for red or white oak, for around $100, $150, something like that, which ends up, after the milling charges and everything, still ends up to be a really reasonable rate for the lumber that you get.
I was just going to say, and you have the option of really having your lumber custom cut to exactly what you want, to whatever you're going to do with your particular wood. You can get it, any size you would like, and real thin veneers if you need. So you have that. You don't have that at a big mill. If you go to pick out lumber, you're gonna get what they get. Give you. So.
This tree behind us that we'll show more about in a minute, I was able to get a whole bunch of really wide 12-inch quarter sawn boards, rift sawn boards, some 2-inch thick, 3-inch thick, 4x6 sizes for workbench legs, small workbench top slab. That's the great thing, is you can stand right there and kind of work together with your local miller to decide what you want. If you go to a bigger mill, you probably won't have that luxury of customizing your tree. So this is a really good option. This particular white oak that we've been sawing up, we just finished, started 155 years ago in historic Charlottesville, Virginia, and it fell in a storm a few months ago, and a couple months ago in the autumn, Todd and I were working on this tree. I'd cut a whole bunch of firewood from the limbs, but then he came out with his mobile sawmill, and we had quite a time. So let me cut, and we'll cut to this next scene, and we'll show you guys a little bit of what we went through in order to get it here. Before Todd arrived at the site where the tree had fallen, I'd cut off a section out of the tree and isolated a 10-foot section of the most prime lumber from the fallen tree. Todd helped me to cut a notch out and get the 4-foot wide base cut off. Then we used some elbow grease and some good old physics to get I think he said it was about 10,000 pound log dragged down towards his bandsaw mill. And I hooked up the chain and gave a little tug on it to get it straightened up. And I think I might have blown my 4-wheel drive in my truck doing this. Something did it. I'm kind of guessing it was that. But it was a lot easier than trying to push it. What really amazed me is how much using leverage and using skids and different things can really save you a lot of actual physical labor when you're trying to move huge things like logs. It's quite amazing. And so Todd jacked up the log up towards the bandsaw mill. And we had a lot of spectators. Down in Charlottesville, there's a lot of people that don't see this kind of thing very often, like out in the country where I live. It was pretty funny. After several hours of a lot of difficult work, we finally got the tree up and to a spot where the bandsaw mill's arms could hydraulically push it up into place. This was actually a pretty joyous moment for us. You're not seeing a lot of what we went through, but it took a lot of effort. So we got everything put up. We cut off some of the sections with a chainsaw, and Todd showed me how the bandsaw mill worked. Actually, quite an amazing machine. The accuracy with which it cuts. The boards get almost a finished surface. It doesn't require a lot of work with hand tools. Well, we both used our chainsaws to carve up some areas that wouldn't fit through a section of the bandsaw mill. So there's a lot to think about. A tree this big doesn't always fit the best inside of the bandsaw mill. But after some hacking and some whacking, finally got it in and made our first cut, taking the top off to square up the log. You got to square up the log to be able to get square boards, especially with what I was doing. If I was just doing flat sawn boards, we could have just gone down through the log, and that may be something you want to do, but I wanted to quarter saw this log, so we needed to square up the 4 sides so we could turn it over and over again. It's really quite remarkable how these bandsaw mills work. You can really control the log with the different mechanical arms and chains that move inside of there, but sometimes it requires a little physical labor as well once it's up there. You can see the bandsaw has to be perfectly tensioned in order to get a really good cut, but once it's perfectly set up and tensioned, it just slices through a log like it's butter. And this is the base of the trunk of the tree. It was a little too fat as well. That gave us a lot of trouble. So I would recommend maybe not starting off with a 3 to 4 foot wide tree like I did. Maybe something a little smaller than that. One more side. Now we pretty much got a square log. Now we're cutting it in half. Now we're quartering the log. We cut it in half once and we're going to cut it in half again. And from that we can go through and make quarter sawn cuts. Quarter sawn wood, if you don't know, is a more stable way to cut wood. The wood doesn't move as much when you quarter saw it, and it also has a really beautiful appearance. Big quarter sections of the log went back to Todd's house for another day. After a few weeks, the weather coming down on the quartered sections of the log have darkened the logs up a little bit, but it's amazing how you can still see some of the beautiful figure shining through. These are gorgeous quarter sawn boards with wonderful figure. First, Todd took off a slice off of the top, gave us a nice square flat base with which to base all the other cuts off of and to get rid of all the irregularities. As Todd mentioned, this bandsaw mill is so precise that you can even get really thin veneered cuts. I got some of these cut-offs, and it's beautiful veneer with gorgeous figure. Look at that figure. This is typical of this is typical white oak figure that you've seen a lot in arts and crafts furniture of the early 20th century. It's one of my favorite types of wood. And here's our first board coming off. We decided to go an inch thick on most of the boards. Even though these boards are extremely flat and uniform, still would give some leeway to be able to mill the boards down. And now you're seeing the workbench top that came off. It was a part that couldn't really be used for boards quite so well, so I decided to make a workbench top out of it. I'll make a Rubo bench for the school. It's not a super long one, but I think it's about 5 feet. We'll do a smaller Rubo bench. And there you go. Now we've got it the perfect thickness. It was really nice being able to stand right next to Todd and him asking me what I wanted. I just felt like it was a custom order shop, getting whatever sizes of boards I wanted, whatever thickness I wanted. It was really satisfying rather than just going and digging through bins at a lumber mill. This workbench top ended up being about 5 inches after everything was said and done. And now it's drying in my workshop. So it was really fun getting to create the actual dimensions of the workbench top. So Todd cut and I loaded into my truck. And the workbench top was flipped off on edge and the edges were cut off so we can more or less square up the workbench top so it won't require a whole lot of flattening on my part. Thanks for watching this program on how to get your tree turned into boards with a bandsaw mill, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in learning traditional woodworking with hand tools, visit my website at woodandshop.com, where you can find free video tutorials, buying guides, and reviews. Make sure you subscribe to my regular blog posts and also check out my 10 steps for getting started. Enjoy!